One of the biggest variables in terms of who gets accepted or who gets denied at the top colleges is going to be the resume, right? And the resume provides a ton of variance and basically an unlimited ceiling, right? So it's not like traditional metrics, which is what makes it very useful for distinguishing top applicants at the most competitive colleges. So I'd mentioned this before. If you're talking about number of APs or SAT score or GPA, these metrics, these very conventional metrics, have a very fixed ceiling, right? So you have a 4.0 unweighted GPA, it can't be any better. Now, you could do weighted GPA, but that's a certain number of rigorous courses that you take, and that itself has a ceiling, right? There's a finite number of AP classes, IB, etc. And then we talk about SAT or ACT scores. The ceiling, it doesn't go forever, right? There's a 36 on the ACT and there's a 1600 on the SAT, and most of the students who are applying to the top colleges are all fixed and clustered towards the very top and very close to the ceiling, right? So, in order to get into a top and highest selective college, if you want to be maximally competitive and give yourself the best chance of admission for the greatest number of highly selective institutions, you need to be almost a near perfect on the ACT or the SAT. Those are sort of our conventional metrics, right? And they sort of have a very fixed ceiling. And most students who apply to the top colleges are they're all clustered around that ceiling. If you look at the GPA distribution at a lot of high schools, a very large public high school will have something like maybe 250 students that have a 3.8 or above GPA, right? And so again, you see this clustering at the ceiling. It becomes very hard to differentiate students who all have these excellent metrics. But when you're talking about resumes, resumes are basically infinite, right? If you're a student and you're starting a business, well, you could run $1,000 a year business, a $5,000 a year, $10,000 a year. You can run a $50,000 a year business, a $100,000 a year business. There is no limit in the real world. And they're all different types of activities. There's basically an infinite number of things that you could do to build a resume. There is no ceiling in terms of how much you could pursue those things, except maybe just, the ceiling via the applicant's sort of abilities and strengths, etc. So this is why the resume is really a perfect tool for differentiating top students, is because it's much more of an infinite game versus a finite game, which is much more of the sort of conventional high school, sort of very in the box, very tight ceiling situation. So that being said, if at the end of the day, we have all these different inputs and we need to get variable outputs, right? There needs to be a differing decision. Some students, will get accepted, they may get deferred, they may get denied, waitlisted, etc. But ultimately all of those decisions move over in the end to being accepted or being denied. There needs to be something fundamentally different in terms of the inputs to get differing outputs and differing decisions, differing outcomes in this process, right? And so anything that is highly common, particularly in a student's resume, certainly their candidacy at large, but anything that's highly common is not going to be a very compelling logical reason for creating a differentiated output or differentiated admissions decision. And so, again, if you have all these students who have great grades, test scores, but you have so many of them, you need other things that are going to differentiate. But then if you're talking about a student's resume, you're going to need to see certain things that make this student's resume more unique or different versus other students to accept them, but not accept other students. And so basically, uniqueness or scarcity is really one of the most important aspects of a student's candidacy applying to top colleges. You need to have something that's different about you. You need to have a unique value proposition, a unique hook, a unique or niche area of expertise. And this is why we talk about this so much, like building a niche, having a very interesting intersection of interests, maybe being interdisciplinary and having two different passions or two different fields, but intersecting them in a very creative and unique way, and that being sort of the niche. So we talk about this sort of differentiating this unique value proposition, this unique hook, this niche a lot, but many students just have resumes that do not differentiate their candidacy, right? And so anytime you have very common activities, if you have these in your candidacy, you have to understand they basically just are going to cancel out with everybody else. So if I have two applicants and I need to decide between them and they both have a 1560 SAT score, I don't have anything that differentiates them. So I can't really make a differentiated decision. And the same thing holds true for, a student's resumes. There needs to be something different that leads to a different outcome,